Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just Another Esports podcast. Once again, joined by me, your host, Nicholas Shady Bacon, and my co host, Mr. Kevin Hubers. Just this past weekend, we wrapped up Stage 3 group play, and we'll be moving into the Stage 3 major this week. A little bit change in kind of the scheduling format for that major. It's now going to be starting on Thursday, going through Sunday. So we're going to have 4 matches every single day, which will be a bit more, exciting since it's not as stretched out as it once was, having it start on Wednesday, the 2 majors prior. But with the conclusion of stage 3, we kind of, saw the wrapped up dominance of the Toronto Ultra since they went undefeated in their groups, as well as the conclusion of the very crazy group that was Group B with some upsets here and there and some teams claiming their stake in kind of the upper echelon of the league. And so, kicking off the conclusion of stage 3 groups on Thursday, we saw 2 matches. We saw the LA Gorillas going up against the Minnesota Rocker, and we saw the New York Subliners going up against Optic Chicago. The first matchup in the LA Gorillas versus Minnesota Rocker, that went all the way to a game 5. The Gorillas have been looking relatively decent over in that Group A. They'd been pushing teams a distance, but in the end, Minnesota was able to kind of stake their claim and push them back down in their place. But I think the more interesting matchup on that day was definitely the New York Subliners up against Optic Gaming Chicago, who's looked
Yeah.
incredibly weak as of recently, and New York's been looking pretty darn solid.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Um New York's been looking not just solid. They've been looking like they're about to make a tear through this major. Um Hydra was great. Like Hydra has been a godsend to the subliners. Sucks to see Diamond Con go, and maybe we'll see him return to the lineup. But right now, they're playing their best COD all season.
Yeah,
Um,
they have sneakily become one of the best, if not the best, hardpoint teams in the game. Currently, overall in the rankings, they are second. They're just below FaZe in kind of the hardpoint records. FaZe is 26 and 12 currently in hardpoint. New York, however, they're 24 and 12. So they're right up there as the second best hardpoint team in the game. And the interesting thing is their ratio is actually pretty dang large. Their ratio, meaning the differentiation between kills and the difference in score, theirs is quite substantial. For every kill, essentially, they're earning 19 more points, which is a
Jeez.
crazy statistic in and of itself there. It's by far the most out of any of the teams. So I'm thinking maybe there's got to be something wrong with that statistic somewhere. Maybe I screwed up somewhere. But at least overall, that's their overall statistic currently for that category. Which, if that is true, that's kind of ridiculous. But I guess some of the highlights were New York. New York had 2 very difficult matchups this week. They had an Optic Gaming Chicago roster who, while has not been looking stellar as of recently, is still a threat to be considered. And then you had the rising LA Thieves, who had, like, we didn't get this into the prior podcast, but Hook joined that LA Thieves roster.
Yeah. What?
So they subbed out TJ Haley for Hook, which it's like you didn't really see like how much they could upgrade it, but they bring in Hook, who's definitely a phenomenal player, and it's kind of, we'll talk about that roster more later on when we get to their matches, but uh, that's a very interesting change to say the least there. But New York was still able to beat them in their matchup in a 3-1, and so, like, outside of like the hard point, like, just what is
Oh,
going on with this New York roster? They're just so good right now.
so in the first hard point, they 100-point club this new LA Thieves roster, and the only thing I could think of, and I got this wrong actually. The only thing I could think
Yeah,
of
we
is that
both did.
we have to stop underestimating Clay. Like James Clay Clayster Eubanks is one of the goats of COD for a reason, and Um, yeah, he just shows it time and time again in hardpoint. He's always there. He's picking up two pieces left and right. Like absolute beast. I will say though that the round 11 the subliners in LA played, it was a close game. Like the round 11 search is always going to be, oh well, if this had happened, then would have been one way or another. Um, control. I
Control was close as well.
honestly, this game made me realize, like, or not necessarily realize, but like finally come to grips with the fact that I hate raid control. It
You
just,
hate raid
I
control.
hate it, dude. It's so bad now. Like, it, the spawns. So if you, the way most people are playing raid now is simple, right? You go at A first. If they wipe you down, you go to B, they rotate over, and then you spawn at A whenever you die off B. So like you're guaranteed to get A almost every time on offense. And then you have to like figure out how to pop B. And B is annoying. I mean, if you, like you played Black Ops 2 back in the day, like that basketball court section is just cursed. I'm just convinced at this point. So, so it's like the control that could have gone either way as well. The Thieves pulled it out. Um, and the second hard point was much better. So I think it's I don't think it was on the Thieves as much as far as like, hey, you know, we should we should make some major changes. They just made major changes and now they're just trying to adapt, ensure that um they're they're gonna be okay moving forward. They got to get used to Hook. Hook was still a monster during this game. Um,
Yeah, he definitely was the difference maker inside of that control. I know he
yes,
had some incredible clutch plays there towards the kind of like latter half of it to really bring home the W for them in that control and push it to a game four. And I guess that's kind of, I guess if we're going to be talking about the LA Thieves a bit, is that kind of X factor the reason that they wanted to bring in Hook and take TJ Halley out?
yeah,
Because
I
I
think
mean,
so.
TJ definitely has an X factor to him.
In
However, I
Search,
think Hook's X factor, at least for this season so far, has been a very consistent one. You saw it a bunch with kind of the Dallas Empire. He was the reason that they were kind of clutching up a lot
right?
in the controls, in maybe some of the search and destroys or the hard points. Like he was that factor pushing them. And so that now LA Thieves has that. Maybe that's kind of like what they wanted. They wanted that kind of additional X factor to kind of help them in series that could potentially go the distance. And this was kind of their first showing. It was a very recent change. And so I imagine the roster is probably just going to get better from here. At least that's kind of to be expected. However, that can't be said for, I guess, a lot of teams that end up making roster changes and hit that honeymoon period and
Right.
then fall off. But yeah, New York, LA Thieves, they're both looking scary. LA Thieves, they also played up against. Actually, this was the only match that they had this weekend was up against New York Cellminers. But yeah, New York's looking really scary in hard point. Their S&D has been looking a bit better, and then their control. They just really need to, I think, pick that up. But they came out in first in their group, so they've already
Yeah, no, they're
secured
doing
themselves
great.
some additional points and they're looking pretty scary. But yeah, so is the LA Thieves. I think more, I guess, the talking point is Optic. Optic, they played New York Subliners and they played the Atlanta FaZe, and they kind of got mollywopped in both series. Both series they played this weekend, they got 100-point clubbed in at least one of their hard points.
And that's not
And
typical for Optic. Like you don't say, oh well, Optic's
yeah,
not a hardpoint team. That's not normal.
they're not a hard point team this year though. Their only winning record in hard points on checkmate. They were 6-0 in that until their loss to the LA Thieves, and then every other hard point they're either even or they have a losing record on it. They're nowhere near like the best hardpoint team in the league as they have been in years past. And their search and destroy, which was the one thing that they really had going for them this stage, really kind of tapered off in their past two series. They lost against FaZe. FaZe is obviously still the best S&D team in the game, closely followed by Toronto. But then they also lost S&D to the New York Subliners in pretty convincing fashion over on Express. I do believe was the map, and like that can't be happening. They can't be
Right.
dropping their S&Ds when their hard points suffering so much. And I know in that, I guess, Atlanta phase match, there was like the server confusion or whatever, but
I don't think that's a good
like they
excuse.
cannot be, no, it's not. And I hate to say it, but it seems like they want to use it as a bit of excuse. I know Envoy seemed to have taken a lot of responsibility for that screw up, but
I
kind of
mean,
I guess the
he pulled
comments
like a
from
point
Dashy,
four
and
or something like that series.
he had the worst series KD since the inception of the CDL at a 0.47 or a 0.46. It was something along those
Yeah,
lines.
that's. I mean, I don't know what to tell you there. Like,
So,
it's
like, what do you think's the issue? I guess with Optic. Now that we're on this topic, they're starting in the losers bracket, which is huge. They will more than likely not be in the top 6 after this major unless they put on a huge showing, which is crazy to think of when a lot of people would have had this Optic roster as one of the top 3, if not the one of the top teams in the game at least the start of the season in power rankings. And now we're finding ourselves like in the situation where they're just losing. Like, yes, their group was difficult, but like with how much talent they have on this roster, they should not be putting up as poor of a showing as they have been in their series. Like,
true.
what to you do you think is kind of the key issue with them? Is it maps or is it gameplay?
I think a lot of it just comes down to, you know, mostly just how they're playing the game. I mean, they're literally like solo pushing hills. They're, they'll get in the phase match, they had two down, and so it was a 2v2, and instead of just, playing for life advantage, waiting for spawns to fix out, they straight up just solo pushed two guys at the same time, like 1v2, 1v2, right there, right there. And that's dumb. And they did that all hardpoint. Like, what are you doing? You can't just waltz in there and think you're gonna 1v4 everybody. Like, that's just not gonna happen. You have to get the trades, and I don't think that they're playing for them at all. They're getting baited pretty easily. I feel like they're just falling for the stupid stuff, and yeah, you're gonna lose a lot of games if you you do stupid stuff like that. So, it's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. I also don't think that they're completely and utterly screwed either. Um, so it will be a process. I think that they're still a playoff team, but right now it does not look good for Optic. Content looks good though, which is the one thing that I did say whenever the one word that I had for Optic going into
It's
the
content
podcast was
team.
content.
What did
So
I use? I think I said implosion.
implosion. I don't know if it's implosion season just yet, but
I mean, as the roster hasn't imploded, but their their placements and their performances certainly have.
yeah, they've
But
definitely fallen
yeah,
from grace.
Optic's definitely going to be a team to keep our eye on moving into this major. Another team, I guess, talking about keeping an eye on, I guess, would be the Atlanta FaZe. They played 2 series this weekend. They played the Seattle Surge and they played Optic Chicago, obviously, where they just 3-0'd Optic Chicago. Absolute stomper of a series there. And then they 3-1 the Seattle Surge. That's more so to be expected. Seattle Surge is by far, well, currently the worst team in the league after they lost to the London Royal Ravens, but we'll get to that in a second. Uh, Atlanta actually, because they beat both Chicago and Seattle, they ended 4-1, and so they actually came out in second overall in their group, even after kind of, I guess, their early loss there to the New York Subliners. And so it seems kind of there's been maybe a slight resurgence in the Atlanta FaZe potentially. I mean, they did go to like 3 game fives over the course of this stage, However, they closed it out strong. And so, do you think maybe there's a bit of resurgence, or do you think that they just played some really weak competition this past week?
I don't think anybody's weak competition at this point, so I would have to lean towards resurgence
Resurgence?
for sure. I mean, like name name one team in the CDL, or sorry, name two teams in the CDL where it's like, this is free. Because I mean, I maybe Paris. I still think this is a little unfair, but there's not really any teams that are just like absolutely free. So even though we say like there was like Division A was way stacked versus Division B this major, um, like there's still, you know, 48 of the best players in the world playing against each other. Like we're not. Yeah, Resurgence. No, I just think that they're playing really good COD right now, and I think that that's what's happening.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think in recent times, FaZe has been struggling in kind of their hard points more specifically. That's kind of been the mode, kind of just basically looking at their stage three where they struggled a bit. Obviously, they played Seattle and they played Chicago. Chicago's been a pretty poor hard point team, and then Seattle, with the addition of Decimate, has not been a stellar looking hard point team as well. Their Search and Destroy though has definitely looked improved since prior stage two, where they were one of the worst S&D teams in the
Yeah,
game. It's definitely gotten better since then. And their controls still looking, they're pretty solid there. They're quite scary in control simply because they're 8-2 on Garrison and 8-2 on Raid, 2-2 on Checkmates, but they have two really good control maps there where they're looking pretty scary.
right.
But that was Atlanta FaZe. They're definitely going to be interesting. They're actually going to be up against Dallas in their first match of the major, so that should be a pretty exciting matchup there. But talking about their opposition now with the Seattle Surge, they brought in Decimate into, I guess, this final week of the Stage 3 major, and they lost both of their matches. They lost to the London Royal Ravens 3-1, and they lost to the Atlanta FaZe 3-1. The Atlanta FaZe one obviously was to be expected. However, that London Royal Ravens matchup was one that they really needed to win. I mean, they were already in the losers bracket, I guess, but just simply getting that win to keep them more so in the race for that eighth place spot, it was really important. And they did end up honestly kind of getting blown out in the respawns there up against the London Royal Ravens. They were able to pick up an S&D win, so maybe their S&D has improved slightly with Decimate. However, the
No,
respawns
I'd
certainly
actually
haven't been
disagree.
better.
I don't think that the Surge are this great S&D team. I just think that the Ravens suck at S&D. Watching the game, it was kind of cringe to watch the Ravens play S&D because they just suck flat out. I mean my notes literally say RR suck at S&D. Um, because it was just atrocious against the Surge. Um,
Okay.
they let them bully them, but um, Decimate doesn't look bad. Decimate might not be the answer, but he might not be the problem currently, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think any player is like obviously Looney wasn't putting up the numbers he needed to,
sure.
and I don't think bringing in Decimate is instantly going to fix kind of the issues that like bringing in a Decimate might fix the slaying issue that they had with Looney in the roster, but that might not have been the only issue that they had.
Oh,
And so
absolutely not.
now they have the ability to identify the other issues. And so it's more so a point of how long is it going to take them to resolve those other issues that they might now have finally been able to identify after solving the slaying issue that they did have with their prior teammate.
Yeah,
So
I don't know. I will say though that um Paul and Zap were great moves to the Ravens. Like, they haven't been
yeah, they looked
performing the
really good
best,
in that series.
but they were beasts. They were like literally, they were all over the map, just animals. Like anytime the Surge would try to do something, it's like, nah, like, welcome to the league, son. Ice up, as Steve Smith would say. Um, no, they tore through the Surge. And if it wasn't Paul, it was Zap, and if it wasn't Zap, it was Paul. Shawnee made some big plays in the hard point, especially on Garrison. Um, or not Garrison, Moscow. I'm sorry. Um, so there's some good plays all around, but man, with Paul and Zap just being around every corner and just feeling like they were invincible, it's a bloodbath. Like, uh, I'm I'm pretty happy with what I saw from the Ravens. Is this still like a toilet bowl? Yes, it is a toilet bowl. Like neither of these teams are gonna make playoffs in my eyes, but the Ravens are looking better. I will say that.
Yeah, I
Um,
think the one biggest takeaway for me was, yeah, don't play London on Apocalypse Hardpoint. They're looking
well,
pretty good, Apocalypse
the
Hardpoint team.
Surge are just terrible at hard point.
Well,
They
yes,
like
but London's 4-0 on that map. That's why I'm
sure.
saying it. And we are seeing a lot of Apocalypse Hardpoint quite recently, and I think I don't know if maybe this is the reason why, but it seems like it probably isn't. But Apocalypse Hardpoint is definitely one of those maps where you can win without getting more kills than the opposing team. As long as your kind of rotations and map play is a lot better than your opposition, it's a lot easier to kind of hold down those hard points. And so you can win without kind of having to just absolutely slay out up against your opposition,
Right.
as compared to like some of the other maps. So
Yes.
it'll be interesting to see kind of which teams start to favor that map more often, if they're kind of the teams that rely less on slaying.
When
They
was
kind of
when
go
was
to
the
that
last
unknown.
competitive COD that had a map pool change mid-season?
It would have been World War II.
That's right. That's right. I can't even remember what map it was.
Valkyrie,
Valkyrie. That's
the
right.
remake of Detroit, came in for Hardpoint and S&D.
That's right.
Yep.
Um. So yeah, I was trying to remember. I was like, I'm pretty sure map changes have happened, but I like it, and I want to see more of them.
Yeah, well, Standoff is probably going to be coming in the next stage for something, at least for S&D. I imagine Checkmate is going to be removed for
Yeah,
S&D, and then potentially something might be moved for Hardpoint. But almost 100% certain, at least for S&D, Standoff's going to come in for Checkmate. That just makes sense.
true.
But that was it for Seattle and London. They ended the group. London ended fifth. Seattle ended sixth in that group. Going back, I guess, to the first matchup with LAG and Minnesota, LAG had a second match of that week, and it was up against the Florida Mutineers. LAG's, they've been looking relatively strong. I mean, they've gone to so many game fives this stage. They went game five with Minnesota. They went game five with Florida. They had a couple of game fives last week. I'm going to bring those up real quick. They went game five with Dallas. They got 3-0'd by Toronto, but the first two maps there were incredibly close. And then I'm pretty sure their first match up against Paris also went to a game five. No, it was
Right.
a 3-0 actually. So they 3-0'd Paris, had a really close series up against Toronto outside of the last match. And then every other match went game five. And that was some decent competition in Dallas, Minnesota, and Florida. So LAG is, I'm actually pretty positive about them going into this major. I think it'll be very interesting to see how they come out in that, but that will be, I guess, a topic for when we move into our predictions. I think maybe the more interesting story here is Florida. They had a 2-0 week here.
Yeah.
Uh, it was not the Florida Classic of going 1-1, beating the difficult team and losing to the easy team. They defeated both of their oppositions in the Dallas Empire, who they actually 3-0'd, and the Florida Mutineers, who they beat out in that game five. So I'm going to head over to you, since you seem to have a better read on Florida than I do most of the time.
Most of the time, I the Gorillas thing was kind of out of left field from them, but I mean, yeah, writing was on the wall for them to beat Dallas. That is a very Florida thing to do. You know, beat the team that you you shouldn't really. I'm not gonna not gonna say that any team's unbeatable, but Florida shouldn't beat Dallas considering the teams that they lose to. Yet, here we are with a 2-0 week for Florida, and they played like oddly well. And it wasn't that Dallas played bad. I can't pinpoint what happened there, but Florida played really well this weekend, and I'm glad that they beat the Gorillas as well. I'm not sure how well the Gorillas are gonna play coming into this major, but you know they're always surprising, right? I think that's probably the word that I would like to use for the Gorillas nowadays.
Yeah, definitely a surprising. I think a really consistent team too. I think that is probably the thing that defines them most for me. Unlike the Florida Mutineers, who've shown
We're,
flagrant inconsistency
yes.
throughout the year. But they were able to kind of clutch up, I guess, this weekend. They ended actually second in their group, up ahead of the Dallas Empire. They ended I believe it was 3-2, or no, they ended 4-1 actually, only losing out to no, what? No, wait, they went 4-1. They went 3-2. I don't know what I'm saying. But they did beat out the Dallas Empire for that second seed, and so they'll be facing off against the LA Thieves. So that's some really tough competition there heading into the major. But we'll delve into that prediction when we get there. But do you have anything else that maybe stuck out to you with this Florida match? How you think maybe they?
I don't know. It seems weird. I would have loved to see who come to Florida, like I was really hoping for our last podcast. But I mean, if Havoc works, Havoc works. That's good for them. That Colt was able to come in and finally find his position in the lineup and get the inconsistencies worked out. Let's hope that they carry that momentum into the major.
Yeah, but that was it for Florida. Let's see, what other matchup did we have? We had Toronto Ultra up against the Paris Legion. Toronto, they kind of dispatched them relatively easily in 3-1 fashion. Toronto ended 5-0 in the stage 3 group play with, I believe, a 12 no, a 15-1 map count, something along those lines,
Yeah,
15 and
they
2.
they're so yeah, let's talk Toronto. What in the Kentucky Fried, or I should say Toronto Fried, fuck is going on over in Ultras? Like, what's going on? Where does this team come from? Like, who are they? Like, this is just never in any given period of time would I have expected this or suspected this from Toronto, but now they're looking at potentially being the best team in the league. So,
Yeah, it's quite terrifying, and they're actually even more terrifying than they were during the stage 2 major. In the stage 2 major, they were still 50-50 in hard point. During this major, they have only lost one hard point, and they lost by 3 points. Or no, they lost by 47 points. My bad. I was looking at one of their wins. They won by
uh,
3 points, but that would have been crazy. They lost one hard point uh during this major so far. They are undefeated in S&D so far. Their S&D is actually disgusting. Since the start of April, let's see, they have played a total of 15 S&Ds since the start of April, and they have lost 2 of them. They are 15-2 in S&D since the start of April. And moving on to their control, it's even crazier. Since the start of April, they have lost one control with a record of 14-1. They've actually broken Optic Chicago's 9-0 control record and are currently on a 10-game win streak in control. So yeah.
yeah, that's they're kind of they're kind of it right now. Like,
Yeah, they're pretty good. You know that Insight kid, probably rookie of the year right now.
yeah, I think that that's a very fair statement to make. He could very easily be rookie of the year. There's been some great talent. You know, he has some stiff competition. That being said, I mean, he's the difference maker. We could be saying that, Toronto Ultra is the favorites to win champs coming up if they keep this up. If they keep this up, there's nobody
Yeah,
beating
we're
them.
still we're still 2 majors out from
Sure.
champs, so let's not get too ahead of ourselves. We know what happened with Florida after
True.
their
That
incredible
is that
run
is true.
last year. So it would be great to see Toronto not have that happen to them. But we're still a decent ways away. But as of right now, for the stage three major, they're looking mighty scary. They're on Atlanta FaZe's side of the bracket. So if Atlanta FaZe does defeat Dallas in their first matchup of the winners bracket, they'll actually go on to face Toronto. So that can be a very interesting and hotly contested series there. So that will be incredibly exciting. But yeah, Toronto Ultra absolutely crushed it this stage. Paris, they finished last in their group. I believe they only beat the Florida Mutineers in that wacky upset that was on par with kind of what we expect from the Mutineers at
Yeah.
times, I guess. But outside of that, this Paris Legion roster has kind of really fallen out of existence of kind of any real conversation of them kind of making a move for kind of that last playoff spot.
And you know what?
Um,
Honestly, it we kind of expected it this whole season. I mean, it's kind of a broken record talking to um talking about Paris every single week. I mean, are they in a better spot now than they were before? Yeah, but I think every other team is as well. I just don't think that they're gonna be able to be competitive at any given point of the season. If they can squeak out a win here and there, that's good and all, but I don't even think that the organization is looking at it from that perspective. So,
yeah, yeah. The only thing they have going for them is their Garrison Hardpoint. They're 8-2 in that, but
that,
that's about it. Um, was that all the teams that played? Let's see, we covered pretty much all of them. I guess we can talk about Minnesota. We haven't really talked about Minnesota. We kind of went through a bunch of them. I think Minnesota's probably the last one to talk about. They played 2 matchups. They played LAG, who they won in that game 5, and then they went up against the Dallas Empire, and they actually lost that matchup there up against them in 3-1 fashion. And so Minnesota, they ended in 4th place overall in their group. So they'll start in the losers bracket in round 2 alongside Optic Gaming Chicago. And Minnesota's really kind of fallen off, so to say, since they had that crazy resurgence, I guess, with Standy. It seems kind of like the magic has been lost, and
to a degree, he's
that
still he's still the truth. Like that kid is
yeah,
still
Standy is
great.
still incredibly good and performing. It's just kind of the team's performance overall has dropped off significantly from kind of how they were performing when he was just brought in. I mean, just
True.
last stage, they were the first seed coming out of the group, and now they're the 4th seed coming out of the group with a lot worse competition or a lot weaker competition if you kind of compare their prior group to this group. Um,
Yeah, I think I give
maybe,
you that.
maybe not, maybe not, but
Like I
uh,
said, every team has gotten better, in some way, shape, form, or fashion. It's just by how much is that's kind of up in the air still.
yeah, I think for me, my expectations, I think, of Minnesota is this is kind of where they're going to be. I mean, they started for me as a very middle of the pack team, and I think that's where they're going to end up for me. Even kind of after this roster change, obviously that roster change improved them a bit for a short amount of time, and maybe this goes back to the point I made with Brian Saints as a coach like a long time ago
Right.
in a couple of prior podcasts was can start off hot and strong, but after teams kind of get adjusted and figure them out, they kind of stagnate and they don't really go anywhere from there. They aren't really able to improve over kind of the course of the title.
Right.
Um, and so I guess maybe in comparison to a different team that is looking to make kind of a drastic change to their play style that I don't think we really talked on too much, uh, at least so far this episode, is the Dallas Empire. Obviously, they played two matches this weekend. They played Florida Mutineers where they got 3-0'd, and they played Minnesota Rocker where they beat them 3-1. And prior podcast, I said this is kind of the defining moment for the Dallas Empire on really proving that this change is going to eventually benefit them in kind of the long run with kind of the play style change. They don't want to have to rely on an X factor player kind of making some crazy play and clutching up for them. They want to be able to win through solid fundamentals and teamwork. And so that's kind of my assumption on why they brought in Fellow. However, they were not able to kind of they kind of needed that clutch factor up against the Florida Mutineers. Their teamwork kind of wasn't enough to pull off the win there. Yes, they played pretty solid up against them, but they weren't able to pull it off. And then in the
Sure.
Minnesota series, you kind of had Fellow making incredibly clutch plays, especially in the S&D. He pulled off an ace 1v3 in the first round of their Miami Search and Destroy, and he had some crazy stat line I think throughout that Miami Search. I'm pretty sure after like 3 rounds he was 8-2. So you still kind of have that slight reliance on an X Factor player really clutching up for them in that series. And so I do not have a lot of faith right now in this Dallas Empire roster, especially since kind of the key reason they were losing series has not changed, and that is Illy drastically underperforming to what our expectations are for him as a player.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like you nailed it on the head there with Fellow. I think that he's been great for the roster. Um, and we'll see if he was a Hook level change to the roster, like if he could fill that man's shoes. But so far, you pull off a good win against Minnesota. Minnesota's a good team. I think that's safe to say. Um, and you'd face a tough loss against Florida as you're still trying to figure things out. You make a pretty big roster change, and you want to figure things out from there. But um, I truly do think that Dallas is going to come back and be a pretty dominant team come after this major. So, is this the major that they pop off in? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty hard when they're up against Faves in round one.
Yeah,
One thing
phase.
to note, Dallas has finally played an Apocalypse Hardpoint. They were the one team that had not played one yet, and they finally played it. And maybe that's another telltale sign of kind of where they feel they are with this roster, since I think Apocalypse Hardpoint is one where you need incredibly solid team fundamentals, more so than maybe some of the other maps where you can kind of have that one player really take over the map.
Yeah,
Apocalypse, I don't think, is as much of a map as some of the others are for that to for favoring that playstyle. But that was it for the stage 3 groups. And if you're okay with it, I think it's time we move on to our predictions for the stage 3 major,
predictions.
since I don't think there's any kind of side news to really talk about.
Not currently. I don't believe that there's been anything crazy on the Twitter sphere that I have ran into. I think that every roster as it currently is, as they played last weekend, is going to be the same. I don't think we have any roster changes to discuss, right?
Yep.
And it's going to come down to adjustments that they're going to be making going into the major. So I think I'm ready for rapid fire predictions.
They might not be as rapid fire
Oh,
as
sure,
some of
fair.
the other ones, but we'll kick it off. So we're starting on Thursday now. So got 4 matches of Call of Duty on Thursday instead of, I believe, 3 or 2. I can't remember. All I know is we got more Call of Duty over lesser days, so it's a bit more compact, but still the same amount of Call of Duty action. So kicking off Thursday, I do believe we have like the London Royal Ravens up against the Paris Legion. So the Battle of Europe is going down right there. And this is actually a pretty big match for the Ravens if they want to kind of move up into contest that 8th place spot. They need to overtake Paris before they do that. Paris is
Sure.
currently sitting at 60 points right ahead of them. London Royal Ravens is at 50. And I think this matchup is probably Ravens favored with kind of how Paris has been performing and the strong performances that we did see out of the Ravens in a very tough group. I have a good amount of faith that the Ravens can take a victory over the Paris Legion here.
Yeah. I've got them in a 3-1. Ravens look great against Seattle, and I would say that Seattle and Paris are kind of at the same echelon as far as teams go. Um, Not saying Paris couldn't win this, but I would imagine that London's roster changes have been more productive than Paris's.
Yep, I would agree. The second matchup that we do have on Thursday is going to be the LA Gorillas going up against the Seattle Surge. I'm taking Gorillas here 3-2 over the Surge. I've really liked what I've seen out of Gorillas as of recently with their consistency and their ability to really push series the distance, and they're still one of the better S&D teams in the game. So
For sure.
I'm thinking it's going game 5 and they're going to take it in the end.
Honestly, Surge's respawn is so bad right now that I'm giving it to the Gorillas 3-1.
3-1. I mean, yeah, if Apathy has a crazy performance like he did on that Apocalypse hard point,
Yeah.
then yeah, just having those insane moments. I mean, Chino's also had Chino, Assault, Apathy. They've all had maps where they've just gone absolutely off the leash and just destroyed the opposition. So I mean, Silly did too in that
Right.
series up against the FaZe. So they've all had their big moments. But
I'm just glad Big
yeah,
Gene's back in the league, man. He's such a good guy. And
yeah, it's great to see him
and
playing there.
the Gorillas are right now I have them as a playoff team. So, are they a good team? No, but they are at least a playoff team. They'll see
Yeah, and
champs.
that's all they need. All they need to
Right.
do is make playoffs to have that crazy EG run.
Yeah,
To
that's true. They just need to pick up aches again.
now, you got cheat there. You can do it with cheating.
True.
I
Money
got
team.
confidence. But the next matchup that we do have, I believe, is the Atlanta FaZe going up against the Dallas Empire. So for me, I definitely got to give this to FaZe. I don't think Dallas is ready for this kind of
No,
opposition.
absolutely not.
Um, maybe they will be come champs time, but currently, I do not think they are. I think this Dallas project, I think, is one that they're kind of in for the long haul, and it's one that we're gonna maybe see like consistent improvement as the season progresses, instead of stagnation. And so maybe they'll hit their final form by champs. That is what they're betting on. However, by champs, it's not champs, so this is not their final form. They're not going to be able to beat FaZe. I'm giving it to FaZe probably in 3-1 fashion over the Empire.
I got him 3-1 as well. I mean, if it doesn't matter what Dallas team shows up, if the FaZe team that 3-0'd Optic in such a hot fashion, if that team shows up, there's nothing you can do, and 3-1 might still be like, giving Empire a little bit too much credit. That team was vicious. So it's like I said, they're playing hot right now. But I don't think it'll last too long in this major.
Yep. The other matchup, next matchup that we do have, winners round 1, is Florida Muneers up against the LA Thieves. So this is probably our first difficult decision potentially. I mean, if we have Florida's on their game, they could definitely contest an LA Thieves roster. However, as we have seen with Florida in the past, they are very much so a 50-50 team. However, I do believe last weekend the coin got both their matchups wrong. Actually, no, the coin got the first one right. Got the second one wrong. Coin went 50-50 again. Just saying. So the coin is currently still 50-50 throughout its time in the predictions. We'll have to see if it ever breaks that, but props to the coin. Consistency is key, as they say. But
True.
what do you think? What do you think the outcome of this series is going to be? I'm probably leaning towards the LA Thieves taking this in. I'm going to say Florida Mutineers underperform and LA Thieves take it in 3-1 fashion.
I'm doing it in a 3-2. I think the Florida Mutineers are going to come out hot. Um, the Thieves are the better team. Um, yeah, that's for sure. You give them a little bit more time to practice with Hook the Nuke, and you're gonna see some sparks fly from this LA team as I will foreshadow my predictions.
Yeah, I think the interesting here is that now you have an X factor on the LA Thieves and Hook, and obviously, yeah, like Kenny's been going massive
Yeah.
with the AR, and then you have kind of the X factors on the Florida Mirrors in Awakening and Skies, and so it's more so on the matchup there on if the if Hook and Kenny can kind of counterplay the strengths of Skies and Awakening, since I do think that the other two players on the LA Thieves in Venom and Draza are stronger than their opposition in
Oh,
kind of Havoc and Neptune.
for sure. I would 100% agree there. Venom's young in the league. He's still trying to find his footing, but Draws is still filthy. And he'll come to play just like he did in the second major. So I think this Thieves team is just they're gonna make a run.
Yeah. All right. So kicking off the Friday, we do have Minnesota going up against the London Royal Ravens. And this is actually one that I could see going the way of the London Royal Ravens if they kind of keep up the performance that we saw from them
Wow.
during stage three. But I'm not gonna go with the crazy prediction here. I'm gonna give it to the Minnesota Rocker, even though I do feel like these teams might have some similar map pools. I'm gonna give it to the Rocker. I'm gonna say it's a 3-2. So I'm gonna give London the benefit of the doubt that they're able to push at the distance. However, we know how bad London is at search and destroy, as you touted, and at their game fives, at least usually. I mean, they did have a crazy game five win over the Subliners, but that was, I think, I'm pretty sure their only game five victory that they have had.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that it's gonna go to game 5. I do believe in the Ravens that much, but Rocker got it. They're just the better team.
Yeah. Rocker is their search, which I mean their search has been kind of one of their strong points, I guess. I mean, currently they're 15 and 13 in their search and destroy, so not like an incredible record. They're by far the best defensive team though in search and destroy. They win 62% of their defensive rounds. The issue is their offensive rounds, where they are one of the worst teams in the league, not the worst. The worst, the two worst teams in the league are the Paris Legion and the Surge, but they only win 38.6% of their offensive search and destroy rounds, which is not good when the league average is usually around like 42. So they definitely need to bring that one up. Uh, but yeah, I still have faith in them with their game five, especially since you even made a note. London Royal Ravens suck at S&D.
They do
So
suck. Like they're tragically bad at search.
I'm gonna
Um,
have faith in your notes.
like I just like watching the games that I've currently seen in the third major. They just can't figure it out. It's like too hard for them. And the Rocker, like Standy can. He's one of the players that I like legitimately believe can 1v4. Um, so like that's where I see them as far as search goes. So if it does go to game 5, which I mean, like I said, I respect London enough. Rocker have got it.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident in saying it will go a game 5. Um, simply because like looking at their map sets, it's pretty. They can finesse it a bit, but
Sure.
uh, I'm not gonna give the upset to the London Royal Ravens there.
Nah.
However, I might in this next series,
Oh
being
no.
Optic Chicago up against the LA Gorillas. Optic Chicago has looked like a big heaping pile of doo doo as of
True.
recent. LA Gorillas, they had a really tough 2 games up against Toronto, and then every other game was a game 5 that they did end up losing outside of the 3-0 versus the Paris Legion. Do I want to give it to the Gorillas over Optic Chicago?
I mean, if you do, like that's where you get ahead on me because I think that Optic can figure out the Gorillas, you know. But I have Optic going 3-1 over the Gorillas. And I was gonna like open and shut. That was one of my rapid fire predictions, but you're over here talking craziness. So
Yeah, I want to go with some spice, but you got to feel like Optic Chicago is going to figure it out eventually, right? Like they got to.
yeah, I
So
mean,
this is going to be another 3-2 for me, but I'm giving it to Chicago in the end. Uh,
Chicago's kind of screwed anyway
yeah,
because whoever wins this has got to play Empire, and that's
or Phase if Phase
or
loses to
or
Empire.
FaZe, sure, but I mean like
God forbid Phase lose to Empire right
yeah,
now, but yeah. All right, well, yeah. Moving on to the rest of our Friday matchups, we got the Toronto Ultra up against the Atlanta FaZe. At least I think both of us do. We have not
yeah,
disagreed yet on
nope,
anything. I'm going Toronto Ultra here. I'm gonna give it to them 3. Yeah, you got to give it to like FaZe to push it to a game 5. But Toronto's just looks so damn strong. I kind of want to say a 3-1. Obviously, it doesn't matter in the end.
right.
Realistically, I'm giving it Toronto.
I'll give it
Uh,
to Toronto as well, 3-2.
3-2. Dang. So we're both in agreement on that matchup. I think the next one might be a little more contested. It's going to be the New York Subliners up against the LA Thieves. I gave the LA Thieves the benefit of the doubt the last time. I think that was one I was incredibly on the fence again with in our predictions for last weekend with that New York versus LA Thieves match. Um, this time, I I think I'm gonna give it to the Thieves, probably. I mean, they did just make that roster change with Hook. They didn't really have that much time to practice with
No,
him, I
not really.
imagine. So this time around, I'm gonna give it the way of the LA Thieves. I definitely think it's got to go a game 5 if LA Thieves take it, since even though the hard points were close, I still think New York has just been a filthy hard point team.
Yeah, they've been
As
really good. Um, I think that the Thieves search might be better than the Subliners. Um,
I
it's
would
very
agree with that
close,
statement.
but the Thieves have been playing really good search. If they can figure out hard points, which they'll have a little bit of time to between last week and the major. Um, I really do think that the Thieves come out 3-2 against the Subliners in this.
Yeah, they're pretty closely contested in Search and
Mhm.
Destroy. LA Thieves is slightly better than the New York Subliners. Um, I think well, obviously they got to win both searches against the Subliners, since I don't realistically see them sneaking a hard point. And then I think the control more than likely goes against the way of the LA Thieves, since New York has just been pretty bad in that mode over
True.
the course of the year. Even though they realistically could have won that control on raid against the Thieves there if it weren't for some incredible plays from Hook. But yeah, this is definitely going to be a really fun series. Honestly, all the matchups I think on Friday are going to be some very fun series to watch. But yeah, we're both agreeing Thieves end up taking it in 5, and that will move us on to Saturday,
Saturday.
where since we haven't disagreed on anything yet so far, we're
Um,
both agreeing on seeing. Yeah, we haven't
yeah,
disagreed yet.
yeah. So it should be
We're both going to
Dallas and
be,
Optic,
yep,
and
and
Florida
Florida
and
versus
Minnesota.
Rocker.
Yep.
So I'm definitely taking Dallas in that Optic match.
Yeah,
I'm saying
same.
probably a 3-1
I
or
yeah.
something along those lines. Probably maybe a 3-2.
No cap detected there. So I'm ready to move on to Florida and Minnesota.
Yeah, Florida and Minnesota is definitely going to be a more potentially contested one. I'm probably favoring Florida here, even though it's on it's standard for Florida to lose this matchup. However, the last time they played, they did beat them pretty handedly, if I do recall. So I'm gonna continue with that trend. I think Florida's going to beat the Rocker. I think they'll beat them probably 3-1. I think it will be relatively easy, to be honest, unless Florida show up cold to this matchup.
Which is entirely possible.
It's entirely possible, but if Florida's playing to their level and if Minnesota's playing to their level, I think Florida is realistically the better team, at least right now, kind of like what we've seen from them at their peaks or at their relative peaks. But
Yeah.
that's not it for Saturday. Saturday we actually have 5 games. Oh, sorry to interrupt you. You
Oh,
had something there.
you're fine. So I have Florida going 3-1 over Minnesota, and it's it's gonna be a tough game, but Florida's been playing great. Um,
Yeah, they've been
so
playing great except when they have not.
yeah. Well, it doesn't
Kind
matter
of the
because
story.
either team has to go up against FaZe, so that's just kind of the
Yeah.
end of the run for
Yeah, so
whoever
let's
is
just
there.
skip there right there. It's a phase. It's going to be a 3-1 up over the Florida Mutineers.
Yes, yeah, that's
We
that's
hit
fine.
5 matches on Saturday, so that's going to be a long day there. Or no, do we get 5?
Yeah, 5. We have the elimination round 3
Yeah.
and 4 and winners final.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they moved it to have 4 on Sunday since that would have made sense, but I guess not because it's a best of 9.
No, you want the winners final to happen so that way you can give both of those teams time to rest for the final. Like
Yeah,
whoever the
except
winner.
I know the pros don't like that. They like to at least have one match before they have to play in the major final.
Oh, sure. But that's well, I guess we'll get to that. So subliners Empire, who you got there?
I I gotta give it subliners over the Empire.
Same. And it's nothing against the Empire. It's just like fellows new and subliners are kind of hot.
Yeah, I'm probably thinking a 3-2 subliners. Although I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Empire could pull out the dub here. I mean, Empire I still feel like has the opportunity for something to just like click during this tournament, and they're just able to pull off some like weird upset. I think Empire is potentially the biggest dark horse. Maybe I guess outside of Optic, you could say. However, I have more faith in Dallas during this major to kind of actually be that dark horse team that makes it farther than maybe some people expected with this fellow change.
Yeah, we shall definitely see. I don't currently believe in it, and it's not anything against um it's not anything against the Empire and the decisions that they've made, but the subliners are hot right now, and the Empire is still figuring out. So,
Yeah,
uh,
but you mean they have Rambo swearing now? That's a whole new Dallas Empire camp. All right, but winners finals on Saturday. It's going to be Toronto versus the LA Thieves. LA Thieves, they could catch fire and maybe do something, but I'm giving it Toronto. I'm giving it Toronto, and they haven't been pushed to a game 5 in a while. I'm gonna say Toronto wins this 3-1. Do you think it could go game 5?
Against the Thieves, I think it's going to a game 5, but I think Toronto do pull it out 3-2. I mean, this Toronto team's gross, but this Thieves team is equally nasty. Honestly,
Yeah,
if
it's hard. It might be hard to tell. Like we might be underestimating how difficult Group B was with FaZe. Obviously, Optic was underperforming, but FaZe, New York, LA Thieves, like we're looking at those teams right now and we're like, holy shit, these teams are scary. And then you look at kind of the other bracket and you got a Minnesota roster that's kind of stagnant. You had Dallas just coming off of one of the most disputed roster changes in history.
yeah,
And then you have Florida, who's a rapidly inconsistent team. And then you got Paris and who else was even in that group? LAG. Um, and so like they didn't really have the as tough competition you could probably make an argument for. I mean, FaZe really struggled in the group that they played in. And FaZe is by no means, even though they lost to the Toronto Ultra, they're by no means a bad team. So um, maybe Group B teams like the LATs come out and surprise us and take down the Toronto Ultra. But like after a 15-2 map record or whatever coming out of their group, like you just kind of have to give the benefit of the doubt to the Toronto Ultra, which is how strong they have looked.
true. Um, and I think for this winners final, you're right. So are we ready for our Sunday matchups?
Yep. Elimination round 5 is going to be Subliners versus the Atlanta FaZe. Does the Atlanta FaZe get revenge here up against the New York Subliners? I'm going to pass it off to you.
No, FaZe just body bag 3-1 subliners.
No,
Just
FaZe does get revenge
oh
against
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Subliners.
Sorry, yeah, for sure. FaZe is gonna come in hot.
I think it's a 3-2 um, over the Subliners for FaZe. FaZe still one of the best SMD teams in the game. Subliners aren't there yet. They definitely had some decent performances SMD, but that's by no means their strongest mode. Obviously, it's been good enough to get them first seed in their group, but up against the like of FaZe, I think FaZe gets a bit of revenge here, and so the FaZe will face off against the LA Thieves. So the top 4 are we're thinking our teams from Group B.
Yeah,
So there's probably going to be a decent shift in the standings. There already kind of has been. Um, I mean, you have Optic. They fell from 3rd down to 5th. New York has moved up to the 3rd place spot. They're only 30 points behind Dallas. Toronto's over there in 4th, just 5 points behind New York. And you got the LA Thieves slowly gaining on Optic Chicago as well, trying to push them down to that 6th place spot. So Optics slowly getting closer and closer to that 8th place mark potentially. I mean, they still got a decent lead on Minnesota and the rest of the pack, but they're looking in pretty bad shape in the standings, especially if it goes the way we predicted. But yeah, predicting a lot of Group B teams to go deep. But LA Thieves versus FaZe. This is, I think, FaZe's time to really start catching fire. They just came off of a crazy Game 5 victory in my predictions over the Subliners, and I'm thinking they're going to pull off a 3-1 victory here up against the LA Thieves.
yeah. Nah, I got the Thieves going 3-2 over FaZe. So
3-2 over FaZe?
yeah, I actually have the Thieves winning this all.
Really?
Ooh, is that spicy?
Okay.
Is that
That's
spicy?
spicy. Well, this is the first we're finally disagreeing at the elimination final, at the losers final. We're finally disagreeing. I got FaZe 3-1 over the Thieves. You got the Thieves 3-2 over FaZe. So
And
my grand finals.
it's gonna be an amazing game. I'm so excited for it.
My grand finals is going to be the Toronto Ultra up against the Atlanta FaZe, a rematch of the
Rematch.
grand finals. However, it's reversed this time with FaZe coming from the losers bracket up against the Toronto Ultra. You have the LA Thieves up against Toronto Ultra. You said Thieves are going to take it.
5-3.
5-3 LA Thieves up against the Ultra.
Yeah.
That's some spicy.
That's a spicy meatball. Yeah, you're saying that. I said, like, dead ass, I'm saying Thieves beat FaZe and then Ultra back to back.
I mean, they got to be hype as heck after beating FaZe, so they definitely will have a lot of momentum going into that match against the Ultras. The
For sure.
Ultras just been looking real strong in some of those game modes, and it'll be we also we got to take, I guess, a look at the depth here in kind of the map set. Obviously, I have a lot of faith in FaZe's depth in their map pool. They have 3 hard points that they're stellar at. Garrison, Moscow, and Raid. They're undefeated on Raid still. Moscow, they're 7-1, and then Garrison, they're 8-3 on that. So that's a whole lot of depth there. Checkmate, they're 3-3 on, and then Apocalypse, they're not that great at that. They're 2-4. But that's a whole lot of depth there for Atlanta in the hard point. S&D, they got 3 maps, more so 2 maps that they're really solid at. They're really solid at Checkmate 4-1, and they're still undefeated on Moscow S&D with a 7-0 map record there. A 72 round win percentage on Moscow S&D. No clue why Optic wanted to play them there. Weird. 50-50 on some of their other maps. So not as much depth, honestly, in their S&D. They kind of really rely on those two. And then their control, I just finished saying earlier in the podcast, they're 8-2 on both Raid and Garrison. So they don't have, I guess, the map pick benefit that they would if they were coming from the winners bracket. So that could make this Toronto matchup against them, at least in my predictions, a lot closer. And the LA Thieves, I guess they're a bit in uncharted territory because they just brought in Hook, and obviously we know bringing in a player into the roster can drastically change how teams start to perform on certain maps. For me, though, I realistically think if FaZe comes from the losers bracket up against this Toronto roster, it's got to go all the way to a game 9. I don't realistically see it going any other way if Toronto comes in with that map advantage, unless Toronto just kind of starts out cold because they haven't gotten to really play on Sunday. But I'm going to give it to FaZe in the end.
Thanks, son.
It,
FaZe up.
5-4. I think I've gone FaZe every single time. I don't even like FaZe uh, as a brand or most of their culture, but you gotta respect the roster they put together and the performance that they've had so far this year.
For sure. Yeah, no, you have to.
But yeah, you got Thieves 5-3 over Toronto.
5-3. You heard it here first, folks.
You want to kind of explain why you have that? I went into a little bit of an
Okay, yeah,
explanation
sure.
on why I
So
feel
the thieves
Thieves
are
are going to win.
gross. Hook's a nuke. Um, you know, this is now the time for them to show up and blow up. And it's just that moment, It's the Florida Mutineers time from last season where, thieves make a roster change and then all of a sudden things just start to make sense. And I think they're gonna make sense for a while. Um, but just like Toronto came in and kind of shocked us in Major 2, I think that these are going to come in and show everybody that they're here to play in the third Major.
Okay. I mean, yeah, Toronto did make a roster change. Uh, I can't remember at what point during stage 2, but I feel like it was relatively close to the major.
Yeah.
I think LA Thieves, they're actually pretty close to having made as many roster changes as the London
Yeah.
Royal Ravens have now. I mean, they brought in Venom. uh, for Temp, or who did they bring in someone before that?
So
Who,
they
who did
had
they
their
who did they
original
sub out for
roster.
Temp originally?
That was I was about to say Haggy. I was about to LMAO. Um, let's see. So Temp got sat for wasn't Draza. It was who was it?
Yeah, it
So
was so.
Kenny is the only one who's been on the
Well, Kenny
roster the
was
whole season.
gone for a day or for a match
Yeah,
for
but I think that
because
was
he was
like
like
internet
sick or
related.
something.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't that crazy.
Yeah, but Temp got subbed out for someone, and then he got brought back in short term or something, or did he get taken out for Venom early on? I feel like there was someone else that he
Temp
got taken
Temp
out for.
Temp left and then came back and then left again.
Yeah, but
Or no, Temp got pulled onto the roster. Who did he sub in for? It was
no,
for
Temp started on the roster.
was it? Oh yeah, Donnie Temp did start on the roster. He was a starter, and then was it Venom? And then they sat Slasher for Temp and put Kenny on AR, and then they subbed Temp out for Draza,
No,
and then they replaced TJ
the
with
the
Hook.
roster the roster change. Yeah, the LAD's rostered that all over the place. Let's just
Yeah,
say that
that's
their
true.
storyline's more confusing to follow, surprisingly, than the Royal Ravens one. I don't know how that's possible, but in the end, you got LA Thieves catching fire and taking the stage 3 major.
Yep.
That'd be wild. I mean, I'm pretty sure they won the third major back when they first became a team in the CWL. I'm pretty sure that was the London major. So maybe lucky number 3 for the
Maybe
LA
so.
Thieves. But for the third major in a row, I'm going with the Atlanta
Phase.
FaZe taking it in the end. We'll have to see if I'm right there.
Yeah, if you keep putting
Uh,
C on everything, then eventually you get it right. So
I got it right for the first major.
that's fair. Well, 3 majors in, maybe you go 2 for 3.
Yeah,
So
but either way, I think a lot of these matches are going to be really fun to watch. Obviously, the league has been super competitive. There's been upsets left and right, kind of in every stage, and there's been major upsets in the majors. Um, like this is the halfway point after this major, so it's really important that teams get these points. With
oh, for
only two
sure.
more majors left, there's not that much time to make that final push for that 8th place spot, or to make it, or to solidify yourself in the top 8 to
Sure.
make it 2 champs at the end of the year.
Right.
But I think that is going to round out this episode of Just Another Esports Podcast. We got a whole lot of Call of Duty happening this weekend that I hope you guys all enjoy. It's about to be a banger, but that is going to be from us. We will see you guys next time.
Later.